So before we get into any of the deep stuff, I first want to get something off the table because obviously there's an elephant in the room for those who know our history together. So the first time that we ever met in person is when I was on your show back on CNN Headline News, and it became sort of a cause célèbre because there was an incident with Zoey Tur. Zoey Tur is a transgender woman, a man who is, in my opinion, believes he is a woman, and Dr. Drew was hosting the show, and in the middle there was a bit of a conflagration when he started calling me names suggesting I was a little boy, and I said, "What are your genetics, sir?" Not you, Zoey. And at that point,
I don't remember that part. I remember you calling her sir, and that's what got her.
So it started off with me talking about genetics, and then Zoey saying, "You don't know anything about genetics, little boy."
I see.
And then me responding, "Well, what are your genetics, sir?"
Okay.
And that led obviously to this big kind of blow up and a national story and all the rest, and the rest is history.
And I didn't produce it, and I apologize to you and to Zoey for putting you in that position. I had no idea that was the direction it was going to go, but I do remember, I've run a lot of groups in my time, and I know when groups are getting out of control and when there's potential for violence. I know how to jump in. I know where to jump in. And I also know where to let things kind of play out. And I always felt like, okay, well, that's kind of, I'm not quite out of my chair yet on this one.
Yeah.
If you felt like I should have been, I apologize.
Oh, no. It wasn't on you, and I didn't blame you for any of that. It was just a very weird and odd circumstance. So I just wanted to get that one off the table.
Right.
Dr. Drew and I
it doesn't bother our
relationship.
Each other. No.
Yeah,
our
exactly.
Is good.
Everything's cool.
Caitlyn Jenner honored with the Arthur Ashe Courage Award at the ESPYs. Did she deserve it? Was it the right choice? Here she was last night on ABC. Take a look.
All across the world, at this very moment, there are young people coming to terms with being transgender. They're learning that they're different, and they're trying to figure out how to handle that on top of every other problem that a teenager has. They're getting bullied. They're getting beaten up. They're getting murdered. And they're committing suicide. But this transition has been harder on me than anything I could imagine. And that's the case for so many others besides me. For that reason alone, trans people deserve something vital. They deserve your respect. I'd like to thank, personally, my buddy Diane Sawyer. You can only tell your story the first time once, and Diane, you did it so authentically and so gracefully.
Joining me now in the audience, Shagun Oduolowu, entertainment journalist, Zoey Tur, pilot and reporter who herself is transgender, and Ben Shapiro, senior editor, Breitbart News, author of Bullies. Ben, did she deserve this award?
For what?
For courageously coming forward, for having been an athlete of great prowess, and now fighting a new battle.
What exactly is the battle? I mean, self-definition is what you do, and my baby's doing it at 18 months old. I wasn't aware that you get a medal for it.
Shagun?
I think she's a fraud. I thought the message and the messenger were wrong. I was in the audience at the ESPYs, and if you want to talk about courage, she said it herself in her speech that she retreated to her mansion in the Hill and was. Where was she in the 70s when the LGBT community was fighting for acceptance? Where was she in the 80s when the AIDS epidemic was ravaging the LGBT
community? She was hiding, feeling bad about being transgender.
Where was she in the 90s when shows like 90210, Melrose Place, and Will and Grace were bringing gay people to the forefront? Where was she in 2000s?
She couldn't come forward yet.
My thing is this. She's a 65-year-old rich white woman that decided to do this, but don't tell me you're walking in the truth for other transgender kids of color who don't have that war chest of money to get the surgery to look like she looks. They're not going to get the cover of Vanity Fair. So don't tell me that she is going to stand on the banks waving her hand as the beacon for transgenders when there's a river of blood of people that die.
Okay, regardless of who the messenger is, okay, whether you like it or her not, or think that this is an authentic person or not, or her intent, she is bringing a conversation to the forefront that is helping people better understand, not you, unfortunately, better understand the transgender community, have more empathy, have more tolerance, and that is saving lives. Because as she stated, there are so many transgender youths and adults that are victims of violence, that are beat up, that are bullied because of the discrimination. So thank God that now she is mainstreaming it so people can better understand it and have tolerance.
Sam, that's dead wrong.
Wait, wrong.
She lives in the most accepting city in the state. And go do that in Alabama.
I don't know what you're talking
be a hero. Be a hero.
Listen to Zoey. Listen to Zoey.
Zoey, go ahead.
Good try. You have to bifurcate it. Did she deserve the honor? Probably not. Is she brave? Of course she's brave. All those years invested as this sports legend. To come out transgender is horribly difficult. It is the most difficult thing you can do. I've been overseas. I've flown helicopter missions, surveillance missions. I've been shot, stabbed. Being brave is being yourself. And being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Did she deserve the award?
65?
Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male, with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
I don't agree with that. I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train. She wants to be called she. I'm going to call her she. I just have a problem with the message and the messenger.
So well, let's I'm going to do two things. I want to reiterate what Zoe said, which is the bifurcation of the courage to come forward after a lifetime as a male and a certain kind of a male versus did she deserve this award? Listen, awards, what are award ceremonies except an opportunity to catch some eyes?
Especially the ESPN.
So, yeah. It's like ESPN, well done, ABC. They did exactly what their job was, attract eyes. They did it. That's what award ceremonies are for. But in terms of the science behind gender dysphoria, you're very familiar with that, Zoe.
Very familiar.
It's not about the chromosomes within our nuclei. Yeah, go ahead.
Chromosomes don't necessarily mean you're male or female.
Gender.
With gender
identity. Go ahead. No, so
especially, but even so, you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics?
No. What are
your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well, but wait, to be fair, but to be fair, you're actually being rude. And that's not fair.
I'm sorry, it's not rude to say that someone who's biologically a male is a male. Someone who's biologically male is a male.
But Mr. Shapiro, you knew very well that saying that to Zoe would be egregiously insulting.
It's not a matter of insulting or inflammatory.
It is. No, sir, you're right. On paper, what is a fact is a fact, and I can't deny that. But you knew that going in that saying that to Zoe would be aggressively insulting.
It's a matter of aggressively insulting.
It is.
The entire discussion is whether we are embracing mental illness and delusion as a society. That's the entire discussion.
No. But you're avoiding the fact. You're avoiding the fact. If you want to talk facts, you're avoiding the fact. You're not a dumb man. You knew that saying that to Zoe would be incredibly hurtful.
Stop it. Roll on the last word here. You haven't had a chance. And then
there's some very startling statistics that are out that say that 80% of us know somebody who's gay or bisexual or even transvestite or lesbian, but only 1% of us know somebody who is in transition. So this is a new discussion for us. A lot of it is very scary for a lot of people. But that's, I think, whether we agree with the whole Caitlyn transition or not, the reality is that we are in a state as humanity right now where we need to exercise a little bit more tolerance. We need to understand the things that we don't understand a bit more. Instead of making inflammatory comments, maybe we have a little bit more tolerance. That's what I think the strength
We'll keep this going. We'll keep it going, but later we're going to no aggression, no violence. We're going to Caitlyn Jenner. She was honored with the Arthur Ashe Courage Award last night at the ESPYs. There's speculation that the award was payback for having given Diane Sawyer her first interview with Jenner on ABC and ESPN, are part of the same corporation, of course, the Disney family. And ABC tells Los Angeles Times, quote, there is absolutely no connection between the interview and the award. There's simply no truth to that claim. Back with Sam, Rolanda, and Mike, and in the audience, Shagun, Zoe, and Ben. All right, so, Zoe, you're in that piece, you're saying it wasn't a transgender going at their own pace. It was a product rollout. What are the liabilities to the human being, Caitlyn Jenner, as a result of being a part of this product rollout?
Well, you can't sustain that type of energy. You cannot sustain that type of fame. Things shift. You have to reinvent yourself. But I think at some point this comes crashing down because along with all this, adulation and hype, eventually you find out that you're really in an existential crisis because what's my life really going to be like? Will it be You have to deal with people like this, the hatred, the people that, you know, that come out against you and say,
We're calling you delusional. It wasn't case. It's hate.
yeah, that's hatred.
Okay.
This is just somebody that's
I don't hate you. I have sympathy for you. I feel terrible for you.
No, you do hate. You're consumed with hatred. That is who you are. You're a little
Do you
man.
know me?
You're a little man. Actually, I do.
Let's stick to the topic. Let's not these first.
But I mean, that's
lose money like that. I'm actually libertarian on drugs, so that means that. So let me be clear about this. People who smoke dope annoy the living crap out of me, and they smell terrible. That said, if you want to smoke dope and lose brain cells, then that's your problem, so long as you're not coming to me for a handout. I think that there are certain drugs, like, for example, PCP, that apparently makes you violent, and that has externalities. That's something that you have to talk about policing. You'd have to talk about policing in terms of, you know, selling drugs to minors. But it doesn't seem to me that when you're talking about things like marijuana, for example, you couldn't police marijuana in the same way that you police cigarettes or alcohol. You know, just make it very difficult to sell to people who are underage. The biggest problem that you have right now is that marijuana is so plentiful in places like California that even legalizing it is not going to get rid of the black market, because it actually, the price is higher in the legal market than it would be on the black market. So that's a serious problem, and suggests that deregulation is actually possibly a worthwhile thing. There are some, I'll admit that I'm split on some substances. Like, obviously, when you look at the opioid epidemic and you see the addictive level of that, marijuana is slightly different because the evidence for addictiveness in marijuana is mixed at best. But when you talk about opioids, which are actually addictive, the higher level regulation of opioids seems to me not inappropriate.
So to clarify my question, do you think that we should still be criminalizing these non-violent offenders in regards to, I mean, any drug?
Again, it depends on the offense. So if you're selling dope to a minor, yes, that should be criminal. If you are smoking dope in your room, then no, I don't think that should be criminal.
All right, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Shapiro. So I'd like to first qualify my question before making it. So, Mr. Shapiro, as a conservative intellectual, I respect you deeply, and I agree with you on a host of issues. However, there is one where I disagree with you, which is what we should do about climate change. While I agree with you that we should be skeptical of climate alarmists, I cannot help but think of Pascal's wager. If the skeptics are right, we have nothing to lose. But if they are wrong, then we have a world to lose. In a 1984 election advertisement, Ronald Reagan's campaign said, if you think there's a bear in the woods, you bring your gun. Given this maxim and Reagan's decision to protect the ozone layer by limiting CFCs via the Montreal Protocol at a time when the science was very much split on whether or not the ozone layer could ever be repaired, would you support a revenue-neutral carbon tax that would be revenue-neutral in the sense that the tax would be balanced by lowering of taxes on like businesses and on individuals and things like that? Do you think that this would be a good insurance policy that would not necessarily give the command economists of the left what they want, but also entertain the possibility that maybe climate change is real and maybe we should do something about it?
Okay, so here's my position on climate change. I would say lukewarm on climate change in the sense that I think that the greenhouse gas effect has been proven in laboratories, that carbon emissions can make the world warmer. The question is the sensitivity of the climate to those greenhouse gas emissions, and how much is absorbed by the oceans, for example, and what effect that has on the climate long term, because the computer model